Hello and welcome to this exciting online workshop on the power of virtual reality in the classroom. I'm Ryan and I'm a STEM T4L leader for the New South Wales Department of Education.
My name is Lawrence and I'm one of the learning designers on the STEM T4L program. Before we begin, we do want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting today. We acknowledge the role of elders, past, present and future, and the importance of observing the cultures, customs and the traditions of Aboriginal Australia.
So let's delve into the power of virtual reality in the classroom. At the moment, virtual reality is everywhere in the industry, from retail to real estate, mining to Minecraft. Virtual reality is nearly everywhere, and we can take advantage of this in the education system as well. We have a unique opportunity to use virtual reality to enhance the learning of the students in your classroom.
We want to take it beyond just delivering textbook content, for example. We want to use virtual reality to help students think deeper, to ask tougher questions, to engage them in higher order thinking. And all of these things are possible. And we've seen them, haven't we, Ryan?
Definitely.
Every time we've gone into classrooms, we've seen kids dig deeper into their thinking processes and into their creativity. And so today, hopefully in this workshop, you'll get to see a little bit of how we do that, the types of materials and equipment we use, the apps we might recommend.
Definitely. We also need to recognize that virtual reality is a layered experience. There's not just one thing when you talk about virtual reality. Virtual reality, we're going to explore today through the lens of what we like to call the virtual reality rainbow. So let's look at the first step of the rainbow, the 360-degree static bubble. So what exactly is a 360-degree static photo bubble? So when we think of a photo bubble, we need to think of it as a sphere, with the photo overlaid on the inside of the sphere, where the viewer is centered in the core of that sphere and can see in all different directions, both vertically and horizontally. How it works is it takes advantage of the smartphone technology, so the movements and rotations you make in the real world match the world of the digital image as well. Over here we can see Lawrence has a handheld headset. And on the inside of that handheld headset, we have a phone that we're going to use for our virtual reality experience. When you're in the classroom, there's definitely some considerations you need to take when you're using the handheld headset. You'll notice clearly with our one that it has no straps attached to it. Now this is for many reasons and makes it very practical for classroom use. First of all, when you're using a handheld headset in the classroom, generally you're going to be working in groups. When you're working in groups, it's much easier for the students to use the devices from person to person when you don't have a headset on. When you don't have a strap on your headset. Secondly, we can see that when you have your headset on, if Lawrence just puts this up to his face, he's completely blindfolded. And if you're working in a classroom with a strap completely blindfolded, it's not necessarily a safe thing to do. We also need to make sure that the students are seated when they're blindfolded with the headset on, to make sure they're not running into tables. And also the students around them need to be seated so they're not going to be running into those students as well.
Let's get an app going.
Yeah, so let's explore an app that we would highly recommend. So this app is called Google Expeditions. And this app allows teachers to share up to 1,200 virtual reality tours, as well as over 100 augmented reality tours with their students. These tours are being vetted by Google to make sure that the information is correct and up to date, and the images are definitely high definition images that you can view in VR to make it very clear for everyone to experience. Lawrence here, what he's doing is he's going into a tour on Google Expeditions. Now this tour has been created by the New South Wales Department of Education in conjunction with Taronga Zoo. He's going to go view an experience at the Dubbo section of Taronga Zoo. He's just connecting to his air server so we can see the screen. He's going to open up Google Expeditions. Now, one of the great features of Google Expeditions is that it allows a teacher to guide the students on the tour as well. So we can have multiple iPhones connected to a teacher's iPad to guide the tour, as well as provide information to the students about what they're looking at. You can see that Lawrence is looking at different annotations in his scene that have been provided by Taronga Zoo and the New South Wales Department of Education to add extra information and learning inside the scene itself. I would highly recommend, though, that teachers don't provide auditory information that is important to the scene while the students are looking inside the headset. This is because they have a complete visual sensory stimulus while they're looking inside the scene. So I would allow Lawrence to look around the scene in the classroom setting. I would then ask him to put his headset down, grab his attention onto me, and then provide him with any important information that would have to relate to the scene itself. I would also set up the next scene that he's going to look at in the way of providing a hook about something he might look at before I allow him to pick his headset up as well. When you're working in a group situation, you'll notice that the students also share on the headset nice and quickly. They're not looking inside the headset for extended periods of time. So this means that it's not only appropriate for the older students, but actually really perfect to use with the younger students as well. Younger students will engage with this technology as well or better than the older students. And this is a great opportunity for us to extend their learning in a viewing aspect using virtual reality inside of the classroom. So even though this is a complete entry level of the virtual reality rainbow, right up there at the top layer, it's actually quite powerful and can immediately provide learning opportunities that can extend and energize the students into the classroom in higher order thinking, engage them in a deep way, and actually provide them with a unique opportunity to visit places they have never been able to visit before.
You know, Ryan, one of my favorite things about VR is watching the kids' reactions. You know, and we've both been in classrooms where kids put the headsets on and they feel like they're so close, don't they?
Definitely.
You know, and just then I was looking at the corroboree frog and watching this frog kind of walk on the scientist's hand. What students can get into those laboratories with those scientists? You can't do that. And virtual reality lets kids go to places that they can't normally get to. That's why I love VR so much. And they get so excited and they begin to kind of call out with ideas and questions, and you see the passion on the kids' faces.
Yeah, definitely. I remember a story when I had a group of Year 1 students. They were sitting in the classroom. What they were actually doing is they were sitting at the bottom of the ocean, looking up at the bottom of a shark to recognize that a shark can camouflage in the sun. What? Now, me as an adult, I didn't know that. How awesome is that to provide an opportunity for students to recognize the camouflaging of a shark sitting at the bottom of the ocean? There's literally no other way a 6 and 7-year-old student would be able to do that.
And you know, we've just started scratching the surface of the virtual reality rainbow. This is just a static photo bubble. So are we ready to dive into the next level?
So next, we're going to dive into annotating these 360 static photo bubbles for ourselves. So we can not only view with 360-degree static photo bubbles, but we can also create. So when we talk about annotating a 360-degree scene, we're talking about adding text, 2D picture overlays, and adding icons or audio to our scene as well. Now, it's very handy when you're creating your 360-degree tours in the classroom that you have something like this Ricoh Theta 5. Now, the Ricoh Theta 5 is a high-definition 360-degree camera that allow you to take your own 360-degree static photo bubbles. It has two 180 lenses that are going to stitch them together in the middle, and it's as easy as pressing a button to take the photo. We can then take these images and put them into an online software such as Google Tour Creator.
Ryan, before we jump into the software, what year level do you think you would do this with? So for people who are watching, they're thinking, okay, well, this all looks complicated, it looks really sophisticated. What year level kids would you do this activity with?
It's funny you say that actually, because me personally, I've done this with kids as young as year 1. So that's 6 and 7-year-olds using these cameras in the classroom. They're quite safe to use because they have the covers that come with it. And it's no trouble for the kids to be using these types of devices in the classroom because it's as easy as pressing a button.
And I guess that's why this type of virtual reality is at the very start, at the very top of the rainbow, those layers, because it's the most easy to access for young kids.
Yeah, exactly. It does have a bit of an on-ramp as well, so you can use it in the simplest form, but you can also use it at a higher level if you wanted to use it, say, in Year 12 geography field studies.
Yeah, because now if Year 12 students are using it, we're really looking for the quality of the content and the academic rigor with which those students have built the product.
Correct.
That's where we are then looking for the sophistication.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's jump into Google Tour
right.
Creator, and we'll show you how easy it is to take your images from the camera and then add annotation to those images as well.
So this is a free product. So Google Tour Creator doesn't cost classroom teachers anything. And if schools have got a Google account to sign in, then it's a really easy on-ramp. So let's get started. I've already signed in with my Google account. And in my account, you can see I've already got one that I've done before, which I just called My Visit to the Zoo, or I can click New Tour. So let's click New and give it a heading.
So Lawrence is adding a title there. He has an option to add a cover photo. He can write a good description or a simple description for his scene, depending on the age of his students. And then he can start creating his tour. Now we're talking about students here as well, but Google Tour Creator is actually quite good for teachers to use to create experiences for students as well, not only as a student learning tool.
Now, before I click the Create button, it's reminding us that what I build here in Google Tour Creator, a teacher can use on the iPad as a guided experience later on. So it's great if teachers want to build content that they then want to guide students through, like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and what a perfect opportunity to go and create your own tour and then let the students experience something that you have experienced firsthand, that you may have the content knowledge on, and then make sure you share that knowledge onto the students.
Now, if you don't have a camera, that's really okay, and you just want to explore, because there is the option to add street view images. So if you just want to collect a series of locations from Street View, you can build your tour like that. But I'm going to hit the upload button because I've used that camera at the beach, and I'm going to select a 360-degree image. I'll get it off my desktop because that's where I've saved it, uploading it there. And it looks distorted. That distorted look is called equirectangular. It's a weird word. But that's actually the way that when you take 360-degree photosphere, you flatten it out on the table, that's kind of what it looks like. So
yeah, so my geography friends would know that's exactly how cartography works. So you take the globe and then you flatten out on a 2D space.
Yeah.
Which I learnt in this role going into geography classrooms.
All right, let's click the Add Scene button. So I've added one scene, and as soon as I've done that, now the photograph looks the way it should. And I'm just going to click on it, drag it around slowly with my mouse, and you can see I'm at DY Beach, and I was trying to give the viewer the feeling of having their feet in the water as the waves were coming up to the beach. This photo is a series of photos that I took at my beach that I wanted to kind of share what I love about my beach. And you can see that as I drag my mouse around, there's me trying to be inconspicuous. You can remote trigger the camera.
Yeah, so we didn't mention that, did we? So you can put your camera on a tripod, use an app, the Theta app on a tablet device, and you can remote trigger the shot if you don't want to be in it. I've actually got some really good photos of teachers hiding in and around their school, trying not to be in the photo, behind whiteboards and under planks of wood. So yeah, that is an option.
Now, the power of annotating a scene like this is asking students to think critically about the environment. What are the important features about environment? What should visitors to that environment know, or what should they see? So we're asking students to think deeply about what it is that's significant about this place. That's what annotation would do in virtual reality. And the options are here on the right-hand side of the screen. So I'm going to add a point of interest. You can see the eye appears. I can move that information around. I can add a photograph as a point of interest, or I could add a piece of audio. So let's select an image and add that image. It's uploading, and I can click add.
So you can see how simple the user interface is for Google Tour Creator. Lawrence will continue to annotate his scene. He would add text, a description, a location. You can add multiple scenes. Funny enough, I've tried to push the limit. I went up to 35 scenes and it didn't stop me. So I don't know if there is a limit to the amount of scenes you can have. And then once he's finished and he's completed, he's ready to share it with the world, then he's able to publish that to the web. That will create a public or unlisted link. I would highly recommend putting in an unlisted link and then sharing that in any platform you would share with your community.
We really hope that you'll dive into the virtual reality rainbow with your kids and get them viewing and creating the static 360 photo bubbles.
So let's upgrade to the next level of the virtual reality rainbow. Now we're going to take that 360-degree static photo bubble and turn it into one with movement and audio in the form of a 360 video bubble. Working with 360-degree video has its complexities, but also has the ability to enhance the learning even further. Do you want to talk about some of the things that, some of the advantages we can get from working with 360-degree video?
So as soon as you introduce video, of course, there is extended opportunities for narrative, and especially when we're engaging with professionally built content. You can take kids to locations and tell stories about those locations that a static photo just doesn't do justice. So we've got an example. This is the Anzac 360 app. Again, we're still using handheld VR, and we're still using mobile phone technologies. Yep. There still is no strap, but we're getting a little bit more immersive now.
Yeah, so now we're going to see in this commercial product, we're able to see the video and the audio would add on to the extra learning as well. So Lawrence is going to start, he's in the scene now, he's going to start his video.
I have turned the audio off though, just for our workshop, you know, trying to play audio through this. So you guys aren't going to hear any audio, but you'll see the video. So I'll pop the headset on and I can select by gazing.
So there's just a button on the top of the handheld device. He's going to gaze and then press that button and it will simulate touching the screen of the device.
I promise you it will.
If it doesn't work, we can always open up the headset, touch it, close it back up, and it'll be viewing the video anyway. So here it is, it's loading the video. You can see the video is starting to play, and Lawrence with his headset on is able to look around that 360-degree video in all directions, both vertically and horizontally. But now we have movement in the scene. Something to point out actually is one of the complexities with working with 360-degree video is things like motion sickness. You can see this video that's being taken it's moving very slowly. So it's really not going to disorientate the viewer to add that motion sickness in the scene at all. And one of the great advantages of working with the handheld headset actually is if you do feel any motion sickness, has no strap on it, you can remove it immediately.
As I mentioned, we turned the audio off, but you can see that students learning about the history of Australia in wartime, experiences like this, where students can be immersed in historical locations, can be really powerful.
Yeah, how amazing is that to literally walk in the footsteps that those soldiers may have walked in there. In a movement and motion, we have an expert presenting in that scene as well, presenting their information.
So Ryan, let's move away from a commercially produced product and let's now see how kids actually with that same camera can capture video and annotate and build virtual reality content. So I'm going to pop the headset aside and I'm going to close Air Server on my laptop.
Yeah, so that camera can also capture video and audio, as Lawrence said. So it's not only the 360-degree static photo bubbles that we're using and taking the advantage of the camera of. Now, Lawrence is opening a software called Situ 360, which is able to use our camera in both facets, still photos or the video aspect as well.
So Situ lets us use video, and it really is an extra layer of complexity from a technology point of view. And Google Tour Creator doesn't use 360 video. So let's create a new project. I'm going to call it Test because I'm a bit lazy.
Cool, so as he's starting his scene there, I will just point out that we're using 360-degree video in the browser, which has a complexity in itself. 360-degree video will create massive file sizes. So you really, really need to take into consideration, why are you using video in the first place? Can you just use that still photo with maybe a 2D video overlay? Because that's going to be much smaller file sizes, making it a lot easier for teachers and students to use video and virtual reality in that concept to create with. Now Lawrence is just going to load up his scene, but we also need to consider when we're using 360-degree video, are you going to have your camera still on a tripod, or are you going to try and move the camera in the scene from location to location?
Do you know, if you're moving 360 video, the viewer can feel very disorientated. So practice, experiment, explore, and it'll take some time to build up your skill so that by the end of your journey, you've gotten really good at authoring 360 content. I don't think I'm great at it yet, no. And I try things out, I explore, I don't quite get it right, but gosh, the learning process is fun, and exploring my environment with that camera is also so much fun. Yeah,
so it's completely new, so it's natural that we're not experts in this field yet, which also means there's not a lot of information out there about how's the best way to capture 360-degree video either. So as it's loading, I'll actually point out this really interesting use case for 360-degree video that I was talking to a physical education teacher about actually. So he was placing the tripod in the center of an activity on a football field actually, where he was trying to point out the best time to run through the gaps on a footy field. So he set up his tripod to try and capture the movement of the scene around him, and then the gap would open up, and then to his students he would point out, now this would be the best time to run through that gap, and it would get his students to practice the scene opening up with that gap in the defensive line, and then he would run through that gap there in the lineup. Do you have any other cool stories that you've seen use cases for video, Lawrence?
I know when I'm walking through environments that I'm photographing or capturing, I actually find myself automatically paying more attention to the environment. And I know that when the environmental education centres use this technology, as soon as you give the camera to the kids and the kids realise when they click the button, everything around them is captured all at once. Suddenly kids pay more attention.
Yeah.
Suddenly they begin to think a bit more critically about what's happening around them.
So Lawrence's scene is just opening up there with the video. You can see now that beach scene that we had before in that static photo bubble has the movement of the waves. We can hear the sound of the waves if the audio was turned up as well. You're really, really immersed in the experience now of everything happening around you.
The reason I've used video for this is obvious, right? I'm hoping that when a person views this in the headset, they feel like they're standing on the rocks. They feel like they're right at those waves. And now, of course, I can add things like text. I can add hyperlinks. I can add waypoints and stitch all of those locations together. People can literally travel from one spot to the other spot along DY Beach as I have photographed it.
Yeah, another cool aspect of Situ 360 is the fact that we can add in embedded media as well. So our text can be added with 2D picture overlays. We can embed YouTube videos or 2D videos that we've taken. It can even embed a Google form, so the students could be inside of this virtual reality video with a Google form that they can then fill out in the headset itself. How amazing a learning opportunity is that, to say, take the students through a safety workshop in the TAS faculty, in the woodwork room, and then assess them at the end of that safety talk in the form of a Google form.
All right, so I've just done one 360 video bubble and one image. That's all we're going to do right now. But you can see there's a really powerful editing workflow that kids can build sophisticated products with. I'm just going to hit the preview button so you can see what it might look like. You can move around the video bubble. Again, there's me trying to be inconspicuous. You can even see the people way over by the pool in the background. And there's the static photograph that I've added. And that photograph could be text, it could be other audio layers, lots of different opportunities for kids to build their own 360 video content. Let's continue our journey through the rainbow of virtual reality. And remember, we're using that as a way to help people explore the different levels of complexity and the different options there are in just that one term, virtual reality. So we're moving on to the next color of the rainbow, and that's the blue, the pre-rendered 3D digital photogrammetry real environments. Let me give you an example, perhaps. In this type of virtual reality, it's actually still about the real world. We're not going off to any imaginary land yet. We're immersing our high school students in a real environment. But we're changing technologies, Ryan, this time. We've moved the mobile phone technologies aside, and we're using a high-powered computer with a headset and some controllers.
Yes, so you'll notice that this headset itself is now tethered to the high-powered machine, so we're not relying on that smartphone technology anymore. We need a much more high-powered device, as well as we have a lot more control and interaction in these scenes moving forward using the controllers.
Yeah, now this represents a extra health and safety issue in the classroom, doesn't it, Ryan? Because
Definitely.
in the last group of virtual reality we were talking about, Ryan mentioned a couple of times that students were essentially blindfolded when they were wearing the headset. That is still the case, but this time there is a strap. This is actually holding that screen to the young person's face, making this a much more intense experience because they're not doing this action of headsets up and headsets down. They're not doing that so often, so it's a more intense experience because of the strap. And because they have some control over their digital environment with the controllers, we're using the word now immersive.
Definitely.
We didn't do that before. Last time it was handheld. This time it's immersive virtual reality.
So when we moved on to this next layer of the virtual reality rainbow, you'll notice that I'm still seated. So I'm going to be going through the immersive virtual reality still in this seated position because we don't have significant movement or interaction per se with the scene as much as the next two levels that we'll go on to shortly.
And it's also, when you've got kids in the classroom that are in VR, having a seated experience just also helps keep everybody safe because there's no people walking around, there's no movement, there's no bumping into things. So the seated experience, again, it's a classroom management, I guess, tool that we can use.
Cool.
Are you ready to pop your headset on?
Let's go. I'm
Let's do it.
excited to go in virtual reality.
All right, I think we're ready to show what's in Ryan's headset. Now, it's going to be a little bit hard for Ryan to contain his excitement because as soon as you put that headset on, you really are immersed in a digital space. So don't forget, Ryan, to move your head really slowly.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Because the rest of us watching, it will be just a bit too much. Okay. Now, we want to start off with a digital environment that still reflects the real world. So Ryan, you've got a number of apps arranged in front of you. One of the apps is Google Earth. So why don't you go ahead and launch that for us? And the reason we're starting in Google Earth, let me just get this out of the way. I'm guessing that was in your way, isn't it?
Yes.
Give that a second to load. Google Earth, I'm hoping, is a familiar product for many of you, and many of you will have used it in the browser. Well, imagine instead of seeing the maps on the screen in front of you, imagine if you could walk through that map and choose any location in the world. Maybe it's the top of Mount Everest. Maybe you've never been to the Eiffel Tower. Well, in immersive virtual reality, Google Maps, Google Earth lets you do exactly that. So the emphasis here is it's still the real world, and any teaching and learning activities that go on inside this are connected to elements of the real world. Maybe you're doing a history unit around ancient Roman ruins. Well, you could go there and see where those ruins are. Maybe you're doing a geography component about landforms. Go and visit any of those landforms that you would talk about. You can see them. Maybe you want to have a look at big cities and see how the big cities are structured and how humans move around inside those big cities. Well, as you can see, Ryan, where are you right now, actually?
So it's actually telling me Tokyo, Japan.
So this particular part of the app is an introductory tour, and it's taking Ryan to a number of different locations automatically. The more time that Ryan spends in this, of course, he can search like he can on any other service and go exactly to a location that he's pinpointed. But right now, we're right in that famous half dome. Can you see that? Are you standing on top of it, I think?
Yep. Trying not to move too fast.
Thanks, we appreciate it.
Oh, Yosemite right now.
Yep. And now you get to see the whole planet, I think. There we go.
Whoa, there it is. I'm standing out in space.
I'm wondering, Ryan, if you can do a search maybe for Sydney.
For sure. So
Give that a go.
it's just finishing the tour.
Yep. So once again, the learning activities for something like this are connected to the real world and are asking students questions about the nature and the characteristics and the features of the real world. It's very much about the environment they're in, rather than what the students themselves are doing. As we go deeper into the virtual reality rainbow, it'll become about the actions and the activities that students do, rather than the environment they're in.
Cool. Where would you want to go, Lawrence? New York?
All right, go hit that New York button, and that'll be the last thing. So hopefully you've been able to see that virtual reality as it connects to the real world provides really incredible opportunities for students to ask questions about the physical world. So let's dive deeper into the sophistication with which we can use virtual reality in the classroom. And now we're going to have a look at the imaginary environments created by an artist that have limited interaction. The example that we've got loaded up right now is called Nature Treks.
And I'm actually really excited to go into Nature Treks right now, Lawrence, because
Why?
as soon as I put this headset down, I'm about to go and walk with dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
Yes.
Isn't that just every kid's dream?
Well, it's mine, that's for sure. So let me go into them.
Go. Pop your headset on. All right. So this app that he's using, it's called Nature Treks, and it is something that we downloaded from the Steam store. In the Department of Education here in New South Wales, generally speaking, teachers and students don't have access to the Steam store because it's a gaming app store. But with the appropriate licensing, we can bring these types of educational experiences to our students. Look at that. What just ran past you, Ryan? What is that?
Well, I think I just saw a Triceratops literally run past me. I felt like he was right next to me.
And looking up, Ryan, there was a very menacing creature flying above you earlier too.
Yeah, so I've got all sorts of dinosaurs running around me. This is amazing.
Imagine if you'd been studying dinosaurs and studying living and dead things. I know that in science, we look at adaptations in life and how living creatures have adapted to their environments. This is a perfect way to enrich that type of curriculum, isn't it?
Definitely. So this is just one of the environments as well. So I chose this one selfishly for me, but there was many other experiences in nature treks that I could have chosen as well.
So remember, the category here that we're looking at is it's an imaginary environment. We're asking kids now to think about things that are not real, things that maybe existed in the past, but this is now an artist's interpretation. And so the types of thinking students are doing and the questions they're asking, the things they might be doing are now possibly fictitious. We're asking questions about, is this valid? What type of ethics are involved in this? So we're extending the kind of thinking kids are doing. Ryan, I'm going to ask you to leave that one now, thanks very much, and jump into our second app. Now, this app is called Symmetry Alpha, and it gives students the opportunity to be the designers and the creators of their own imaginary virtual reality environment. The idea is that an entire class can work on a SketchUp file. If you've ever seen SketchUp, it's a 3D modeling application that is probably appropriate for about year 4 and up. Do you reckon, Ryan?
Yeah, definitely. So I've definitely used it with year 3 and 4 students myself.
Okay. So that's the kind of level of sophistication that app is. But of course, we don't use immersive VR with level 3, with year 3 and 4. We only start in high school with this particular hardware. So once they've designed their model, just sitting on a normal computer, the whole class could be doing this, they can take their SketchUp file, save it onto the PC that is powering this virtual reality, and then load that file up with this, with this app. So Ryan is just looking for the downloads folder that is probably in that user's. Ryan's loaded the file, and remember, it was just a regular SketchUp file, and he's now can see it placed on his digital work table. So Ryan, you've got a bit of a bird's eye view there of that particular project. Are you ready now to kind of teleport down into it?
Definitely, I'm excited to go and have a look.
Okay. So the value here is that designers can get a very first-person perspective of their designs. This particular example is from a high school here in New South Wales, and the students were given the opportunity to redesign the kitchen and study area of their library. They worked in groups, they talked about the design process. They used the virtual reality computer as part of the iteration of the design, going in, having a look at the design, making changes and decisions, going back out. I would never suggest that you do this for 40 or 50 minutes at a time. Spending just a few minutes examining the model, thinking about the design, and then stepping back out into the real world to make those changes, I think is probably enough. Ryan, when you're in there, do you feel like you've got a good sense of how the space has been designed?
Yeah, really well. So when I was down in this perspective, you can see I'm looking at the scene to make sure that the heights of the tables might be correct, the size of the chairs are correct in the settings, the amount of storage and desk space is appropriate in my setting. So I think they've done a really good job at designing these spaces.
These are the students from Greystanes High School that designed this. And in fact, just see that, that glass wall there with the colours on it. I was listening to the students talk about their design process, and one of the students had recently gone to a church service, and whilst he was sitting in this church service, he was looking up at the stained glass windows, and he thought to himself, isn't the design of this stained glass window beautiful? I want to bring that into my library design. And that's where he got his inspiration from. So he brought his real world ideas into the design process and was able to share it from a very first person perspective. Well, that's been a little bit of a deeper dive into the power of virtual reality in the classroom. In the next level, we're going to get really active and make Ryan work a bit harder. Well, we're nearly at the end of our journey through the virtual reality rainbow. We started off with a really simple 360 photo bubble. Oh, hang on, Ryan, it's not really simple.
It's not simple at all.
It's not simple, but it was such a great entry point. And now we are at the stage where it's completely immersive and engaging, and the user is now in control. So in a second, I'm going to let Ryan go, and he's going to be in total control of his digital world. The phrasing that we're using on the rainbow here is now that it's an imaginary environment created by an artist, and there's now significant interaction and movement. Now students are really doing stuff. And the learning is actually evident by what the student is doing, what they're making, what they're creating. Previously, it was about the environment that they were experiencing or observing. But now, Ryan, it's about what you're doing.
Yes, I'm going to go into complete control mode. I'm going to go into Google Tilt Brush, and I'm going to create a scene and an environment that hopefully it's good enough that you can guess what it is.
All right, pop your headset down. Now, I'm going to... While Ryan is building and making and creating and designing, there's a couple of things that we want to remember with immersive virtual reality. Remember, he can't see visitors, for example, that come into your classroom. He can't see people that are walking around. Maybe they're accessing other resources in the classroom. So when you're planning for a virtual reality experience and students are this kind of deeply engaged, it's really important to make sure they've got enough space around them. Obviously, you've seen that we've moved the table. That's deliberate because Ryan needs to have space to move around. There's also the people that are in the room. They know that Ryan can't see them. And so when teachers are using this technology, I often recommend that everybody knows that someone is wearing a headset. No surprise visitors, for example. Or make sure that a student is watching the other student like their buddy. So right now, for example, I could be Ryan's buddy. If somebody was going to walk in, I would stop that person and let Ryan know somebody else was walking through. Imagine if he started waving his arms around, madly painting clouds and knock somebody in the face. And that's what that buddy would do. Just make sure that everyone stays safe in the classroom. The app that he's using is Google Tilt Brush, designed by Google with artists in mind. So he's literally now in charge of his own world, and now he's got the freedom to explore his own ideas, his own creativity. This might be for a visual arts subject, or it might be for a creative writing activity. Maybe the task is to paint the scene that he's writing about. Maybe his teacher has challenged him to think about leisure activities. Maybe it's PDHPE, and maybe talking about leisure and the types of activities families go on. So you can see that Tilt Brush and creation tools like this one offer really powerful cross-curricular opportunities. Ryan, that's beautiful. I'm guessing you're making a campsite.
Perfect, you can guess what I've made. So it's just a start, but you saw how simple and easy that was to create, straight in the environment itself. So I'm quite happy with that.
Looks amazing.
Perfect.
Now, I know that even though that it's inside a virtual reality headset, you can actually export and share the products from VR. They are viewable by other people, and they can be published on platforms like websites. But of course, the best way to experience them is in the headset itself.
Definitely. So that's a great experience there, Lawrence. But,
Yeah, nice work.
Unfortunately,
we're out of time. It's time for us to finish up. We really hope that you have seen the different layers of the virtual reality rainbow, and that you've been able to kind of gain an extra idea of how you could use the virtual reality technologies in your classroom.
Definitely. So it can certainly be intimidating to look at virtual reality and think, what am I going to do? Where am I going to start?
Yeah.
But remember, virtual reality is a very layered experience. It's not just one thing. So if you would like to start with virtual reality, look at that first step, start viewing in Google Expeditions, get your students viewing that experience, and then make your way through the journey of the colors of that virtual reality rainbow.